introduce my co-presenters. It's Laura Clark, who's had a problem with her laptop, so she's joining on the phone, and Calvin Wright, and they are business partners working with our adult and children's social care colleagues on their learning and development needs. So over to you, Laura.
Okay, hopefully this is working. Please give me a nod if it is. Thank goodness. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name's Laura Clark. As Sarah says, I work in the learning and development team within the council, and we're responsible really for looking at the commissioning of our learning and development for our social care staff. So particularly those that are non-social work qualified. So I'm really interested to hear from different aspects from your organisations today, and what's brought you here today, I should say. Hand over to Calvin.
So yeah, my name's Calvin Wright, and as already stated, I'm a colleague of Laura and Sarah's. My background by training is social work, which I qualified 20 years ago. Someone reminded me the other day, which feels like a long time for such a young person. So my predominant support role is around the people on the pathway to social work qualification, and those in social work qualification, so the newly qualified programme, and moving on through career.
Thanks, Calvin. So we're going to share some slides with you and hopefully give you a space to reflect, talk about professional reflection, and get you to share best practice with each other, because we have a lot of professionals on the call. So it's about having a professional discussion, really. So sharing your insights, learning from each other, and reflecting on experience. So just as a reminder to us all, really, that in these busy times, in this volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world that we find ourselves in, reflection, taking time to reflect, is very difficult. We know, but we know that it improves practice and helps us to prioritise and manage workloads, increases job satisfaction, lowers stress, embeds learning, and to have that continuous, connected, challenging, contextualised coaching kind of environment that is the ideal, is the kind of underpinning way we would all want to work, I'm sure. So just remembering really that the value of reflection, and remembering to try and find time for it in our working lives. When we were planning this session, the three of us really kind of landed on the Gibbs model of reflection, and just understanding that our learning from direct experience is more effective if it's coupled with reflection. So we've got to be intentional about that. So when we learn something, or when we experience something, it's about us saying, right, what was that? What did we learn? It's our attempt to synthesize and abstract and articulate the key lessons, and reflecting on what's been learned makes the experience more productive. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Gibbs cycle, but this is, what happened, what were the feelings associated with that, what did you expect the outcome to be, what was good and bad about it, what else can we make of it, what else could we have done, and then the change, the what's going to happen if it happens again, what's going to change. And I expect all of us as professionals kind of do that automatically, but it's whether or not we stop and have a think that we've been through a cycle of reflection, and we've tried to embed that experience or that learning so that we change for next time. So what we wanted to do was to ask you about your opportunities to reflect, have in this world that we're in with shrinking capacity and more work. What are your opportunities to reflect? Do you have time, and how do you carve that time out? Because I think this is about us learning from each other. And then what we're going to do is take you through an appreciative inquiry model an example. But first of all, over to all of you really. What are your opportunities to reflect? You'll see the cartoon, many of you have seen before, I expect. You know, we're too busy. No thanks. We haven't got time to look at the solution that might make our work easier, and reflection is one of those. So does anybody want to share, or Calvin and Laura, if you want to start, what are your opportunities to reflect? Jasmine.
I think for me, it is important to have peer supervision or kind of peer group. That's the best way to reflect, because where you have one-to-one supervision, that's very effective, but then you're just kind of having discussion with one person. But where there is a peer supervision, I find it more effective way, because it's a very safe environment and people can discuss very comfortably, and there are questions that you can ask your peer without hesitation, and they can come up with their own kind of experiences.
Yes, thank you. And you have plenty of opportunities to do that. Are you able to put that into your working life?
Yes, easily.
Good. That's good, isn't it?
Can I ask Jasmine what area you're from? What organisation are you working in?
I work with Hampshire County Council. I work as a social worker, senior social worker in hospital settings. So I work with safeguarding, and I am a senior social worker. So I have got like people who I supervise. So I have actually made a group of them together as their peer. So they have to meet weekly with each other and discuss, kind of celebrate one of their success case, or kind of discuss one of the cases that they might have felt a little hard. So they get every week an opportunity to discuss between themselves. And if there is requirement they want me to join, then I can join. But mainly it's their kind of thing. So I've kind of made a habit that it's not only I get the opportunity, but the people I supervise, they also get that opportunity to kind of talk between each other.
Yes, a key word there was habit for me. You've made it a
Yeah.
habit. Yeah.
Yes,
That's good.
we never have a time, but it's kind of, if you put something, it's like if I have got a meeting to attend every week. So if it goes in your calendar, so you have got no excuse until unless you want to make.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
Lucy. Oh, sorry, Laura. Do you want to carry
Sorry,
on?
I just wanted to ask one more question, and sorry to put you on the spot, Jasmine, but if you're able to, or if you're happy to pop it in the chat, is there a particular model that you follow when you're having those discussions, or is it a bit more kind of organic?
I think it's subjected to, like, because I kind of supervise people who are social worker and who are care managers. So I have to use kind of their stance, what model they find comfortable using. So some of the people they are very kind of good with using SWOT model. So maybe, and some other people, like with the care managers, I have to teach them some of the models myself. But when I'm actually supervising, so I'm also kind of highlighting what their strengths are. So it is also subjected to the case basis, where if somebody is more comfortable in kind of somebody is more kind of shy, then what kind of model is it? A task focus I'm going to use with them? So is it one task at a time and then they can complete, then we can discuss something further? Or some person who is more kind of reflective and taking more accountability, so they are already on top of them, I know that task is not something I have to do something different with them. So it's subjected to, again, what the case is, what the scenario is, because my predominantly work is kind of crisis all the time. Where we work in hospital, it's always a crisis. So at times I have to kind of help them to go into the basics, like prevention, because when we can get so habitual in the hospital to do into crisis, then we have to remind ourselves, what about the prevention? Did we look into the prevention? So it's subjected. Sorry, my love, I might not be making much sense, but I'm
No, you are.
hoping.
No, it's very insightful.
But it's really on their sense. So when you start supervising, like I really am privileged that I have dyslexia and dypraxia, so I've got a very clarity what I need. So I think at times when people like who have got special kind of like dyslexia or dyspraxia or ADHD or anything, then I kind of find and work along with them that what kind of module actually suits the people I'm supervising. So it helps me to understand my kind of the people I supervise, and they actually feel like I always give them autonomy that, you know what, you don't have to be supervised by me. You have a choice that if you think that I don't have those strengths, why don't you change your supervisor?
Mm.
So having kind of that, giving them that autonomy that, oh, there can be an option. So it's not that because they don't like me or I really they like me, then they
Well,
had
it's about
I have
style,
to.
isn't it?
It is about the
Mm.
style. Maybe I
Mm.
don't have those strengths to kind of supervise them. So kind of giving them that power that what is their learning? What do they think is appropriate for them might help. And it helps me, really helps me. And with my kind of, my work gets lessened because now I don't have to think much because they are telling me what they need.
Thank you so much. Lucy.
Hi. So yeah, just off the back of, I mean, that whole conversation, my opportunities to reflect are mostly every morning with my peers. So off the back of COVID, a lot of our work is now agile working, so we're not seeing our team members face to face. So we as a team have really stuck to having regular meetings only for 15 minutes, half an hour of a morning to catch up with everybody, you know, see how yesterday went, what have they got planned for today, is there anything that's really burning that they need to kind of get off their chest and talk about with peers. I really value that every single morning. It's just really healthy for our team. But what's nice to hear from the conversation that's just been had is that other teams are actually doing that, and it's really refreshing. But I have also seen it on the flip side when teams aren't so glued together, and you can see that perhaps people are struggling with being able to reflect in an open environment and have that cohesion within their team. So yeah, personally, I reflect most mornings with my team, but a lot of my time reflecting is outside of work when I've had that time to sit down, breathe for a moment, think about the day or think about the situation that's happened, and then I can rationalize things, you know, what went well, what could have gone better, what would I change, all of that kind of thing is, you know, having that space to do that work.
Absolutely. And where are you, Lucy? Where are you based?
Adult social care on the Isle of Wight.
Lovely. Anyone else want to share their ability or not to be able to reflect and how they do it?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, isn't it? What are your lack of opportunities, perhaps?
Debbie, hello.
Good afternoon. It's afternoon now. I thought it might be of value to give the perspective of an elected member, because in a way I don't have a line manager in the same way. I will confess, in lots of occasions I'm an overthinker. So I think that very much sits in the reflection side of things. But I tend to work better under pressure. I really do relate to the no thanks, we're too busy, because there's always that, as soon as, you know, in fact, I've just had to sign off a paper now that I literally had 2 days to review. But I think to be fair, I mean, I do my reflection when I walk my dog, because that's my time when it's all about getting back your headspace, isn't it, really? And self-care. I think reflection is very much about self-care and looking after yourself. And I have to say, support from cabinet colleagues is really important, that we work very much as a team. So that's my reflection on my opportunities to reflect. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. It's really good to get your insight, because it's a different perspective, absolutely, as you say. Just one more. Anyone else want to share opportunities to reflect?
I think I will jump in. So sorry, I came a bit late. I work in commissioning in Hampshire County Council.
Oh, you're welcome, Linda. Thank you. Yes.
I do value reflection. It was not something that was part of my ways of operating, because my role was very much doing. However, and also you are working with people at different level. So, you know, to ask support workers sometimes to reflect is a bit, you know. However, I have seen huge development in this area in terms of one of my core aspirations was to develop a culture of feedback. And to do that, you need to be really taking the time to reflect upon your contribution, the contribution in that space, how that space is being used. And for me was because the nature of the activity we are doing is, like you said, dealing with crisis. But for me, people can burn out. And so it was about to rebalance, to capture as well the great stuff that is working. And so to use and leverage on that to be able to address the unplanned things. And time again, I noticed that those unplanned things, those crises, is because we were not able to plan, or because they are new member of staff and they don't have the skill to ask for help. So I think with my providers now, it's completely embedded in the ways of working that any project we are working on or things, we set time to reflect. So lesson learned it's like a BAU for me on all the aspects that I am contributing towards. And I do believe that it creates oomph and energy to be able to go back out there in the world and reset some pathway to get some coherence, order, and most importantly for me, ambition in the social care that we can shape confidently the future.
That's really inspiring to hear, Linda. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. So what we're going to do is just take you through one model of appreciative inquiry this morning, and we thought we would sort of try and use the model to take us through the rest of this session, really. So Laura, do you want to start with this?
I was just pondering just on some of those comments first before we go into it, and it just made me reflect on some of the things that we talk about in some of the courses, other courses that we deliver, where we talk about that kind of physical aspect of what happens in our brains, and we've only learned a little bit more about this in recent decades, of course. So that bit around, if we've got so much stress and anxiety and those kind of heightened emotions running around our brains, then we've only learned recently that's a physical aspect that actually stops us from thinking well. So it just made me think how interesting it is that, like Debbie described, it was the walk with the dog, it was Lucy being able to just kind of down tools, breathe, then we can get those kind of neural pathways working again and actually thinking clearer. And I think that's a really important point that we can't probably emphasize enough within this session, that it's the fact that we need that space to just be calm and comfortable, safe, to be able to get those that thought process of reflection even starting to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just picking up on that. I mean, there's the old piece of research, and I think it's still relevant, that 66 days of something becomes an automatic habit then. And I think what we've been hearing is that reflection is successful if it is habitual, or it is planned, or it is expected. And someone just said that actually what the issue is, that if we don't reflect, then we aren't working smart enough to be able to have time to be able to reflect, and then you've got that chicken and egg. So putting it into a program or a piece of work or a project is one of the really successful ways. And I really like where people I think it was Jasmeet who was talking about the cultural aspects or neurodiversity or of special requirements or whatever we would call it, but if we are having reflective conversations, then understanding what we need to be able to have successful reflective conversations, and what that other person or people we're having those conversations might need as well.
Thanks, Calvin. I know that we've been reflecting about the nature of work, and especially on coming out of the back of COVID, which I think it was Lucy that described how we've kept some habits because they were good, and obviously ditched a lot of others because we didn't want to be doing them and didn't need to be doing them anymore. But yeah, we've reflected on the nature of work, and in learning and development in the council, we're really trying to encourage people to say work is more than what arrives in your email box or your a task from a manager or something in your objectives. It is about learning. It is about reflection. It is about networking with other people. That's work too, and it's as valid, if not more valid, than the task. But because we're living in a world where task come quicker and quicker, we tend to get bogged down with that. A bit like the guy on the cartoon. The one that's pulling the cart isn't actually looking at the wheel. If you notice, he's got his head down. He never got the chance to look like the guy behind who can look and say, oh yeah, thanks, but we're too, thanks for that idea. But so it is about us, taking our head out of those tasks. So we live in the world our questions create. Everything we do is shaping the next action, the next thing, and our questions and our interventions with different people are shaping their worlds too. And this is why it's such a complex world to be in. Laura, do you want to take us on with this one?
I was going to say, has Debbie got her hand up, or is it just my phone view?
I can't see a hand.
Oh, it might be just my very strange connection that I'm looking at. Apologies. Okay, I shall have a go at taking us through these, but I have to confess I am working off my phone because my laptop has died, so I can't see our original notes, so you might have to assist. So appreciative inquiry then. We thought this was quite a useful model for us to take you through today. So as you can see, it was developed back in the 80s, so it's been around for quite a while, and it's still going strong because people do find it very valuable and very useful in terms of a model of a framework for having those discussions with people. So it can be used as a way of thinking as well as an actual framework for discussions, as I say, so as well as that formal approach. It changes the focus from kind of what's wrong rather than we often kind of look at what's gone not very well with things. It's a kind of little bit of our British human nature in a way, a bit of our British culture in there about looking at the failures rather than looking at the strengths of things. So this model really helps you to kind of focus on what's gone well and perhaps look at how you can build on those strengths rather than make right the deficit. And it helps to create change by, as I say, building on what's already working. So very much a kind of ethos that you'll have heard if you're working in social care. We talk about strengths-based practice a lot, and it really kind of echoes that. Does that cover everything on that slide? My team's saying. Okay, so if we just break it down then, so appreciative inquiry. So if we break those two words down, so appreciation, so it's looking at that recognition and the value of the contributions and things that's happened in that scenario. If we look at the experience that somebody has had, the environment that people are in, the discussions that people have had, the decisions that have been made, we're recognizing all those things that have gone well in that scenario. And then the inquiry part is to start to kind of explore that a little bit deeper, understand what's happened, and really be open to how we can do things differently based on what's gone well. Next slide. So it breaks it down into these key elements. So it talks about discovery, dream, design, and destiny. We're going to break those down a little bit further and talk about each one of those. So discover first. So that discovery stage is really about starting to think about what are those things that have gone well in this scenario, and particularly if we're going to apply it to a safeguarding context, because obviously that's what our topic is this week. But interestingly, though, or we should say that you could use this model for any context. Doesn't matter whether it's from a safeguarding, social care, any kind of environment that this model would work. So it talks about what are the things that have gone well, what helps us to be our best. So it talks about really starting to explore what are the things that have been really positive around this scenario, and what seems to have made a difference to people. Okay, next slide. So the dream part is starting to explore those possibilities. So what could be possible? What could you imagine might be different? So if we had a kind of magic wand, I suppose is the concept. If we had a magic wand that we could do something differently, what could it be? And to try and think about what is the potential in a scenario. If we had no restraints, if we had no things holding us back, what would that look like? Okay, next slide. Okay, the design section is about what would need to happen next. So if we could have some of those things brought into reality, what would we need to make those happen? Who might we need to get some help from? Who could influence that decision? What kind of control have we got around making this happen? And what bits of it could be possible? So kind of coming back from that discovery section and then thinking about that dream, but saying, well, how could we actually make this a reality? What would need to happen next? And then the final one is about destiny. So what are those actual specific actions that we need to take? And we always try and throw in the SMART model into this section. So thinking about whether things are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So that acronym of SMART, and thinking about what are the actual things that we could break down. And if it's a really big thing that we've identified, how can we break that down into smaller chunks and make it a little bit more realistic and achievable? How can the change be sustainable? So what would need to happen to keep that positivity, that thing that you've identified happening for much longer than perhaps what you might ordinarily think? Okay.
Thanks,
Laura.
Laura.
Is there any other notes in there that I've missed?
No, not at all.
I can only see the slides. So
yeah, no, you've absolutely done excellently there.
Okay, thank you.
You have really helped me by using this model. This model, I'm going to actually give it to my new person who has changed, because she was feeling overwhelmed today, that she has just recently joined, not even a month ago, and she's feeling overwhelmed. So I think that will perfectly fit in that with her.
Oh, that's lovely to hear.
Thank you.
And I think it's a really nice model, because it really helps somebody to focus on those positive things, because as I say, we often just our human nature is sometimes to just focus on what might have not been so well or not gone so well in the scenario, particularly when we're working with people. We focus on the things, oh, I could have done that differently, oh, I should have said it like that, or I should have mentioned this thing. But actually, it's all those things that actually just being there and being a listening ear sometimes might have been enough for somebody. And I think the ethos behind the whole model is that the more we focus on the strengths, we're more likely to do those strengths repeatedly the next time. So we're less likely to do anything that may not have been so positive.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that one. That's really an effective one, I can see.
And I know what we wanted to do was kind of, we started the discovery part with asking you about your opportunities to reflect. So in terms of the dream part, what would be the dream to be able to put reflection into your working life if you don't think it can be there, or isn't there at the moment? What would be the dream about everybody being able to reflect?
I think I'm naturally reflector, so I am always reflecting. Like, but I really encourage others also to kind of reflect, because I find it kind of a way to manage stress. So it is kind of building emotional resilience for myself. And I believe that when I see, I come to hospital 2 days, I work from home, and 2 days I work from hospital. I only work 4 days. But the days I'm here, I make sure that I just don't go and sit in my room, but I try to sit with the staff, and I kind of don't rush to open my laptop. I just go and check with them if they need me, if everything is okay, how's their day plan. I don't care whether I supervise them directly or not, but because they are working with me on duty. So I think that kind of way, and they know that they can just kind of come and discuss with me, and even then and there, if there is a case and I know that there might be somebody else who might have better expertise, so I don't hesitate and I just call that person, I just involve that person. So automatically there is a reflection kind of thing, and I think it just becomes a habit for them, like rather than them running to the management, they are just kind of discussing with each other and without knowing it. So reflection is becoming part and parcel of their life.
And it helps with independence as well, doesn't it? And fostering independence and independent decision making as well as that. Linda, in the chat you've put, do we have supporting information to support that work? Is more than tasks, queries coming in. Do you want to expand on that a bit for us? Linda, if you're I was going to say, if you're talking, you're on mute.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think, it's amazing to have those sessions. I really value them, hearing different experiences, different input. And for me, if I'm being honest, the learning space is actually this co-creation space where people are coming with that individual experience. However, because of a changing landscape, I have to be careful about where I put my time. And I think so we have professionals here who are advocating about reflection time. But if I'm being honest, if I come in a formal way with a framework with the different partners I'm working with, I don't think I will get buying. However, when I slip throughout, a meeting casually, oh, how was your experience? What did you learn out of it? Then I will have incredible feedback. And people feel comfortable about sharing their process, their journey. So for me, I think, it's about skilling people that you can do that, you can take the time. We're not going to be necessary in all those spaces to foster that. But if you have supporting information to back this up, that I think could be helpful to shine that information to other partners to make use of it and to see the real impact of it. And it's been, there's a body of evidence to support it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Wendy, Wendy's saying we talk about reflection in all staff supervision and appraisal. Also, whenever things have gone so well or there's been an incident or accident, we reflect as a team and complete a learning from adverse event form, which we share and discuss. It's invaluable learning to gather thoughts from others and suggestions of what they may have done differently. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else got anything to share from that? What do you think of that appreciative inquiry model? Do you think, as Jasmine said, that's something you could use or something you have used and have seen before? Is it, if for anyone, if they're willing to share, is it an impossible thing in your environment to carve that time out? Is it impossible because of the of work and everyone's capacity? Be interested to hear from different colleagues, you know, around this virtual space about what your experiences are, and to give you the opportunity to reflect too.
I work for Southampton Council. So my name is Joanna Bassam. I work for Southampton Council, and one of the advantages of the work that I do is that I manage my own calendar, and I put as much or as little into it in terms of tasks and meetings and delivery of training. And I was just having a conversation with my manager this morning, with her saying, "You're doing too much. What are you going to do about it?" And she and I were talking about how I need to carve in time in my calendar. Otherwise, I will get to the point where I will get sick again, which is what happened last week. And it's cut, and it's either we were then having a conversation about practicalities of that, and we were looking at how do I put it in well in advance. And I think that's one of the things that's relevant to this discussion as well.
Absolutely.
Is like you said, somebody said about putting it in as a regular thing, putting it in your calendar, having it as a reminder, having it as allocated time. But it's there. Do I do that in advance? Because if it's like, oh well, next week or next month when I'm not as busy, then I'll get round to it. We all know that means, you know, it will never happen.
It won't happen.
Because there will never be a next month where we're less busy, because it just looks less busy at the moment because the urgent things haven't started yet. And so it's doing it in advance, I think, is one of the things that I've already been thinking about this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. And I think that's the destiny part of this. This is what action should you take, and how will the change be sustainable? This is about absolutely, as you say, the best intentions on Monday. If no action's taken, you don't carve that time out and have it as kind of safe time and protected time, then it may not happen, and other things will always get in the way. My team are fed up with me talking about 4,000 weeks. It's Oliver Burkeman, I think, but I'll find the reference in a minute. It's I don't know if has anybody heard of it apart from my team who have to death. So he talks about the fact that the average lifetime is 4,000 weeks, and people may think that it's more than that if you were asked how many weeks. And it's about the fact that our inboxes will never be empty, our work will never be done. We won't ever have the time to do it all. So why are we trying? And the fact that you have to carve out those times for yourself. You have to carve out the reflection time, the learning time, the time to network, because otherwise the work will just cascade over and over again, because that's what life is like now. And there is nothing heroic about emptying your inbox or finishing your jobs. It won't happen, so accept it. It's a bit of a culture of acceptance, and then thinking, okay, so what can I achieve? What can I do today?
Can I kind of be silly and say something? Because one of the things that made me think seriously about reflection, and I actually use it not just in my professional but personal life. We expect the job we do. We expect that our clients should make changes in their life. Isn't it what we expect from them? They have got their kind of way of saying and telling us why they can't find the time, right? But we still kind of see them like, oh, they are not willing. We put that pressure. So inclusion will not include themselves unless the client is willing. Counselor will not include themselves until a client is willing. So we have to have our own willingness to make those changes. If I want to go on a diet, something that is stopping me is me, because I'm not creating that time. So it's a habit. So if you actually, my counselor was telling me that just if you want to make a change, then you have to be sticking to that routine for 6 weeks, to see that change in yourself. So I think as professionals, we are all busy. And trust me, I really honestly don't have time to kind of help my people to kind of supervise and give them that time. But because if not, then what are the consequences? Then I look into those consequences. Then it just gives me automatically a willingness that when it is kind of manageable, let me do that. So I think there is also a possibility to convince ourselves somewhere that it is required. It is part of our job. So maybe we need to kind of have that, tweak our thinking. So maybe
Giving ourselves
incorporate.
permission.
Yes.
Mm.
Because I really felt very guilty. Initially, I was feeling very guilty, and I really, like the other colleague was saying, I was going through some sickness because of the stress. So unless I was ready to make changes with myself, how much strategies my manager was going to put, it was not going to work. So
yeah,
don't know.
that's a
Sorry.
really interesting reflection. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really interesting.
And I think the other point just to reflect on is that we are often not very good at recognizing those signs of stress in ourselves, that actually we need to learn to understand what our body's telling us at times. And actually, when we're becoming stressed, when we're becoming overwhelmed and overworked, our actual quality of work and the decisions that we're making, the thoughts that we have around our actions that we're going to take, they become not very good, should we say? let's be very simplified with some of our language. They become not very effective, and we become not very effective. So it's that recognition that actually, if we do carve out that time, we give ourselves that permission, as Sarah says, to mark out that bit in our diary that says, actually, this is my time where I just need to stop and think and have a moment of calm, because all this other crazy stuff is happening all around me. And if I allow that to overwhelm me, then we do hear that the result is often poor health, physical health, mental health. Yeah. You make very, very valid points. So thank you for sharing those.
And reflection is about, as Laura says, just jumping on the back of that, tuning in to ourselves, isn't it? Tuning in to our bodies and minds, and actually it's a really good practice to do that, to sort of tune in sometimes, because otherwise we are just pulling that cart full of stones. Anyone else got any things about perhaps the design phase of that appreciative inquiry? You know, how can you make things real? What would need to happen next to make this happen, to carve out that time? We've had some suggestions there about putting it in the diary and then not moving it. That's the key thing, putting it in the diary and then not just shifting it to the next time. How are you making it real for people in your organisation?
That's what I'm really interested to hear.
Yeah,
what's
really
actually
interested.
the strength?
What's working? What's the best practice
working?
we can share together? Yeah.
I think for me, it's, what I'm hearing here is people using their own experience. So, and also, as I said to you, it's not to have a formal time or thing, is using all the opportunities you have, because in commissioning, we are very effective. There is a lot of work being done now, share documents. So there's no many opportunities to, meet face to face. So if I start with my experience of reflecting on something, I think I'm giving permission to other people to step in. And again, my mission is to cultivate a culture of feedback, and I can see the ripple effect with my providers, with my leaders, to really, consistently share balanced feedback. What has worked well, what hasn't, not in a formal way. So we really open those conversations and those safe space.
Yeah, I was just writing in the chat that I really like that, cultivating a culture of feedback. Like that phrase, Debbie.
I was just going to say pretty much what Linda's just said. I think working in silos is not good as part of reflective practice, and I think getting input from others to perhaps sometimes get a better perspective can help with the delivery. And quite often we need, it's about that collaborative working again, isn't it? And it's about sharing different views, and it's very rare that you have the autonomy to progress things solely on your own. We work very much across the piece, don't we, with partners, and sometimes we can get very almost tunnel vision and focused, which is good to a degree, but that's where the reflection then comes in to just take that breath, to be able to step back and just listen to others, because perhaps there are different, there's always going to be different ways of reaching the same end goal. And I think that's where reflection is really helpful, and getting the views of others on a particular topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is about learning from each other. None of us have got the answers, have we? And the more we talk with others, and people have talked about peer reflection sessions, the more we do that, you know, the more we learn, because we're only seeing things always from our own perspectives and not from other people's perspectives. Oh, I think we might have lost Laura. She looks as if she's frozen. Calvin, you operate peer supervision for students, don't you?
Yeah.
Any reflections from that process and what the students get from it?
So I'm just going to pop up the document that Andrew's sending around to you guys. So that underpinning appreciative inquiry is a set of questions also that support the different phases of. I think if we put it in the context of the safeguarding conversations that we would be talking about in terms of safeguarding week, that there's we can utilize this to be able to look at a situation that's happening in our organization or a situation we've been involved with, but we could also use this to be able to support a person that has been part of that that safeguarding concern or that safeguarding process, to be able to talk through them what the situation was. Obviously, if it's an ongoing inquiry, we won't want anyone to be involved with that, but it is a tool that can be used across the piece with anyone. It's also a tool that we can use with ourselves as an individual as well. Sarah's talking about the peer supervisions that we have in the newly qualified social worker program that are there at specific points just before the review points at 3, 6, 9 and 12 months, and they're specifically there to support newly qualified social workers to have a space which is safe but has some challenge in there as well in terms of professional autonomy, professional practice. But I mean, we were talking about this session that we've just had. We were talking about the ethical dilemma of unannounced visits within social care, which really helped us to have a conversation with a set of 18 professionals about actually what does that feel like? What does legislation say? What would, in terms of appreciative inquiry, what have been the benefits of people undertaking unannounced visits, i.e. someone in adult service finding someone on the floor and being able to call ambulance services and them being on the way to recovery, or someone unannounced visit to a family home and finding finding either a house in a unsafe conditions, or actually on the positive side, finding that family is functioning really well. But that idea that the unannounced visit may be interrupting human rights as well. So that was a safe but challenging space for us to use a model such as appreciative inquiry to work through that in terms of what would be the dream for the individual newly qualified social worker in terms of that balance between their own professional status but the requirements and duties of legislation to safeguard an adult or a child. And also in terms of what does that look like for them as an individual, and what does that look like them as a collective in terms of officers of the Isle of Wight Council. And actually, what do they want to do in terms of destiny? What do they want to do to be able to navigate that? Do they need to have conversations with their manager or their service manager about where they feel about this? Ofsted are quite clear that they feel that it's a fundamental part of safeguarding the use of an unannounced visit, but we have to clearly record why we're doing that, and there's a clear rationale to do that. So that what we found in those professional conversations we were having last week, and there's newly qualified from adults and children's services there, so a nice a blend really that actually legislation does and guidance says, but some professionals feel uncomfortable with that. So that's that self-rationale about actually how do I square the circle as a professional about feeling uncomfortable about something that legislation say I can do. People didn't go away with answers, but they went away with more clarity about what they might need to do to have that ethical confidence.
Thanks, Calvin. I just put something in the chat there that the initial slide around, we're living in the world that our questions create, but also that we need to intentionally create space. And I think that this space today was created in terms of carving a space where a group of people who've never met before are able to come in and share reflections and take away learning, and we have to be intentional about that, and we're not intentional about it very often at this level. And I think it's really been useful to hear lots of different practice. I hope you've got something from it, and certainly the papers and that you'll get later will support that, and hopefully you might give it a go if you haven't used this model before or used something that someone else has said. Quite like the end of this session to have some reflections in the chat about the session, please. So if you haven't wanted to or felt you wanted to talk during the session, perhaps some reflections in the chat.
If it's okay, I'm gonna share my reflection on this. So I work in commissioning. I don't deal with safeguarding per se. It's dealt by operational team. But I was really drawn by the title of some of your courses. So yesterday I attended Windows of Opportunity. It was an incredible quality session. Today, professional reflection workshop. When you think about safeguarding, you think about, cases, very factual, revisited, but what you have created is a safe learning space where people from different boards, different organizations are coming together. And for me, you've created depth, because it's not about just the what, is really deconstructing what we are here to do to build better for the future. So for me, it's very valuable because of depth, because of the connection with other professionals, and because it enabled me to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And thank you, Jacqueline. So third year social work student, be able to take the ideas away and implement. That's brilliant. Thank you, Jackie. Anyone else? You might just want to reflect it internally, and that's fine too.
I will just point out also, Sarah, that the meeting slot is due to end very, very soon. So could I thank you all for attending today and presenting. It's been fantastic. It's been a great end to our Safeguarding Adults Week. This video will be available on our website as soon as I can get it processed and uploaded. And enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Andrew, for helping to facilitate this. It's been really good. Thank you.